Well, calls for the United States to stop the sale of some weapons to Israel have recently been echoed by ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee, Representative Adam Smith. Now, while in the past he was opposed to blocking weapons sales as leverage, in a new statement he's now said, right now, it is impossible to see how further military action in Gaza could degrade Hamas's capabilities to any appreciable degree further than what has already occurred. And Congressman Smith joins me now from Seattle. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us on BBC News about this. First, I'm just curious what response you've had to this change in position. How are voters reacting?
Well, it's mixed. Some are supportive, some are not. That's the nature of politics. But I think that the situation has just changed so dramatically in the last few months with what Israel, frankly, has been able to do to degrade Hezbollah, Iran, and Hamas as well, with the collapse of the Assad regime, denying all three of those groups an ally. Israel's in a safer and more secure position. And also the war in Gaza, it has become clear militarily they're not going to be able to completely destroy Hamas as they keep saying they want to do. So continuing the military effort is unlikely to achieve any significant improvement on that. And we have seen the humanitarian crisis just go to ever higher levels. So it just doesn't make sense for Israel to continue to prosecute this war. And as I said in my statement, it also hasn't done anything to bring the hostages home. Yes, Hamas should absolutely release the hostages, and that ideally would be the peace agreement. But right now it sounds like Netanyahu is the one rejecting that agreement, an agreement to turn the hostages over in exchange for stopping the war. So we're in a different place. I don't think that Israel should continue the war in Gaza. So that's my opinion. Well, what do I do to encourage Israel to make that change? That's where I think talking about the leverage that we have in the U.S. with the weapons that we supply, I think it's somewhere over 60% of Israel's weaponry. We have leverage on that. And as much as I support Israel's right to exist, and as much as I recognize the threat from Hamas and how they've driven this war, the current path isn't getting us where we need to be. Israel needs to choose a different path.
Is part of this also humanitarian concerns for you? There were voices even on the first day of Israel's invasion who said dismantling Hamas purely through military might would not be possible. So I'm curious what's made you change your mind about that particular situation.
Well, I don't agree with that assessment. Like on October 8th, trying to respond militarily to Hamas didn't make any sense. I've always think it's been both. You need militarily to degrade Hamas, and then you need to build a better future for the Palestinians. So people who were calling for a ceasefire days after October 7th, that would not have been the right course of action unless you don't think Israel should continue to exist as a country. But a lot has changed in the, almost 2 years since October 7th. I mean, three big things. One, Israel's adversaries have been dramatically weakened, as I outlined. Two, the military portion of this effort has clearly run its course. It's not achieving any more than it achieved 3, 4, 5 months ago. And third, yes, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza has gotten ever worse. So those three things have changed. And as situations and facts change, I think people need to change their positions to reflect the new reality. And that's why I take this position. Look, we've got to begin building some kind of future for the Palestinian people. Just continue to fight and fight and fight isn't going to get us anywhere in terms of defeating Hamas at this point.
Now, I also saw some of the responses to your announcement here, and there were some who were saying, isn't this too little, too late? The Gaza Health Ministry saying Israel's killed more than 62,000 people in Gaza at this point.
Yeah, well, again, the situation has changed. I mean, a lot of people, and I'm sure the people who made that comment would have said that Israel shouldn't have done anything in the first place. But the threats coming from Hamas, Hezbollah was lobbing missiles into northern Israel. Some 100,000 Israelis had to abandon their homes in the face of that missile barrage. Yeah, some people were. There's a lot of people who don't support Israel's right to exist as a country. But I disagree with them. I think Israel has a right to fight to defend its borders. But we are past that point now, in my opinion. So, what's changed is all the things that I said change. We're in a different place. than we were even 3-4 months ago. And Israel continuing to prosecute the war past the point where, in many cases, their own generals have said, militarily, we have achieved what we can. That opinion has been widely expressed. That causes a change in the circumstances, and I think there should be a change in policy. And this jeopardizes Israel, as I also say in my statement. Israel is at risk of becoming an international pariah, unsupported by any country in the world, and that will jeopardize their ability to continue to exist as a country. So facts have changed. I think the policy should change.
What role do you see the United States playing in a post-war Gaza?
Well, I think we can help coordinate efforts. Certainly, we can, support Israel once they make the right decision to create some future for the Palestinians. But mostly, it's a smaller role. The big role needs to be played by the Gulf states and by the Arab states, by Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and to help build a future for the Palestinians. Because the situation now, there needs to be an alternative to Hamas. You have to, and that means you got to support somebody. You don't want to support Hamas. There's got to be somebody within the Palestinian populace to build an alternative. And that's what Israel is currently standing in the way of. So I think the U.S. can play a coordinating role, but the dominant role is going to be played by the Palestinian people in the Arab states.
Representative Adam Smith, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today on BBC News.
Thank you.